Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to talk to you guys a little bit about stress, how stress can negatively affect your gains in the gym, and how to help mitigate that. So let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing, work on skilling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. Alright, stress is actually an important topic. It is something that we do need to talk about in health and fitness, and we even need to talk about its effect on your sports, athletic ability, strength, muscle gains, everything, because it affects all these things. Stress is an absolute killer. All right, stress is a killer. We know that people who are really stressed out, have high stress lives, can easily die 10 to 15 years sooner than they should. Stress can literally kill you. All right, and so it's important to understand that, because excessive stress hormones can also break down muscle tissue. They can slow down. They can slow down recovery, everything else. So mitigating your stress is important, not just for your muscle gains, but also for your overall health. Now, fortunately, lifting weights and exercise themselves can reduce overall daily stress. So that's a good thing. That's a big plus for people who do have stressful lives, is that if they're exercising regularly, sorry guys, my voice is a little hoarse here, got a bit of congestion. If they are exercising regularly, they will bring down their overall stress levels. So that is important, but it's also important to remember that even though training for a lot of people can be very, very therapeutic and can relieve stress, training also elevates stress hormones. And the more intense you train, the more your stress hormones are elevated. And normally that is a good thing. Normally that's a good thing in the sense of, when we've looked at different studies on muscle gains, what we have noted is that things like testosterone release do not affect the amount of muscle that you gain. In other words, the amount of testosterone that you produce after a workout has no measurable impact on the amount of muscle that you gain. It doesn't matter. But the amount of cortisol, a stress hormone that you release at the end of your training, or you seem to have elevated cortisol levels, gives a higher anabolic response. And a lot of people say, wait, that doesn't make sense. Yeah, it makes sense, because when we talk about breaking down muscle fibers, we don't mean in the literal sense. We don't mean that you physically break them down. That's not the aspect of it that causes the muscle gains. It's the chemical aspect. It's the tissue disruption. Well, cortisol, the stress hormone, breaks down protein. That's one of the things that it does in the body. It breaks down protein for an immediate release of glucose. Well, what happens is that if it breaks down, your cortisol levels are a little higher from a slightly more intense workout, a little more metabolic fatigue. Right? It's a little more stress involved, hormonal stress involved. It breaks down a little more muscle tissue, but that also signals the body to have a large counter response of regrowing muscle tissue over the next day or two. It will create a larger growth response because it created a larger breakdown in stress. It's your body trying to reach homeostasis, if that makes sense. It's like for every action there is an opposite and equal reaction. Basic concept, it applies here. Your body tries to counter that by making the muscle grow even more. Okay, so that's the reason that hard training and breaking down muscle tissue, it's not the physical pulling, it's the actual stress involved, the chemical stress, hormonal stress. That's what's actually going on. It's not micro tears, it's cleaving the protein bonds. Now, the thing to remember though is that hard training can also contribute to your overall cortisol level, and that's something you have to balance out. Now, what I just described works fantastic for people who have a perfect lifestyle, fairly low stress life, get plenty of sleep, good nutrition, all of that. It works really well. The more balanced your life is, the more you can push yourself in the gym and grow from it. The problem is that if you already have really elevated cortisol due to a really stressful job, really stressful life. It could be temporary situations going on. You know what? Your mother could have cancer and you could have just been told she only has 10 weeks to live. Okay? You get put in a situation like that, your stress levels are going to go through the roof. Particularly the more you care about your mother, the more you're going to be stressed out. Right? So that elevated stress is going to be there all the time. The extra training can contribute to it to the point to where you can push, you can train really hard. And yeah, that might seem to help you at first, but it actually will elevate your total stress hormones and cortisol to the point to where you start losing muscle tissue, because it doesn't come back down. It goes up high, and during that middle of that response, you still have those elevated levels that are still trying to break down proteins and everything else, right? It can be problematic. If you're going through a particularly high stress point in your life, what you're going to find is that stress mitigation becomes more important than training overly hard. You're going to overtrain easier. You're going to find yourself stalling a lot easier the more stress you're experiencing. So what I would recommend to people, keep your hardest training there when your life is at its lowest stress levels, because what you're going to find is that when you're really, really stressed, and it could be your work, your school, your relationships, your family life, it could be any number of things that have your stress levels above normal, your training stress can push you over the edge. So those are those points in your life where if you're going to be there for a while, you need to reel in your total training intensity, your total training volume. You'll still make gains. You'll still make gains, but you can't be pushing yourself to those limits. That's why programs like my Novice 5x5, I tell people, that's for people who have a perfect lifestyle. Your lifestyle might not accommodate that program just due to the workloads involved. And if it doesn't, then so what? Run a slightly easier version of it or one of my other programs. But there's no need for you to push yourself and bury yourself with the workload. Now, what I would say to people, there's a few things you can also do to mitigate stress. Pretty high on that list is to look at the sort of cardio you're doing, because already most of the stress that you get from your training should be coming from weightlifting. And if you're going through a period of your life where you're stressed out a lot, this is where things like LISS cardio shine for your cardio. The higher intensity your cardio, the more stress hormones you also release, like weight training. Well, any sort of high intensity cardio is going to interfere with recovery and everything if you're already in a highly stressed day-to-day life. Your weight training needs to be handling that. You need to be doing cardio that is very low intensity, that relieves stress more. And actually, lower intensity cardio can improve recovery, and it doesn't have the same amount of stress hormone release that higher intensity cardios do. I would recommend to people, if you're going through higher stress lifestyle, keep your workloads reasonable on the weights, and then do any extra calorie burning, any extra just exercise for general activity. Keep it with lower intensity cardios because they're more relaxing. It will help reel those stress hormones in more, and you'll still get extra physical activity, extra energy turnover, which is important for overall fitness. You can't be ideally fit if all you do is lift weights. You really need other activities in there than intense weightlifting. So in this case, you're going to want the lowest stress ones that are going to relieve stress most and help you with recovery. So just nice lower intensity cardio, even a brisk walk with a backpack, riding a bike, just for the extra physical activity, because that extra activity that isn't stress inducing the way that weight training or HIIT cardio or something like that is, can bring your overall stress levels down a little bit, okay? Because it's calm. It's a calm activity. Same thing, I would recommend when you're going through a period of your life like that, train as if you were using some of the most intense methods in the world, like Bulgarian training and stuff, and Matt Perryman talked about all this, of keeping your arousal level low even when you're hitting training maxes. Don't hype yourself up in the gym. Don't use pre-workouts. Don't push yourself psychologically. Let your muscles do what they're capable of doing while doing calm lifting. Again, that state of calm becomes important. Consider things like meditation. All right, start learning to meditate more. Start learning to listen to more relaxing music. And even if you're like me, I like metal and everything else. Bring it down to not spend more time listening to some relaxing music. Take a look at your diet, because diet can affect stress. Carbohydrates actually lower cortisol more than any other macronutrient. Increase your carbs a little bit. If you know, your calories will control how much weight you gain or lose or whatever else. Increase your carbs. Put a little more focus on carbohydrates. They bring cortisol down. They bring stress down. Eat more vegetables, more fruit. Get your diet a little more balanced, and make sure that you get sleep at any cost, because sleep, nutrition, relaxation, these are all going to be important factors for mitigating stress. And if you don't mitigate your stress and you're going through stressful times or a stressful job or anything else, it's absolutely going to bury you, and you're not going to be able to train as hard. You're not going to be able to gain as much muscle. So you need to do everything that you can within reason to attempt to mitigate these things. All right, and it will help you tremendously on all levels with all of this. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.